Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to take your earthworm distribution data table and we're going to take that table from a Google Doc and we're going to turn it into a Google Sheet. Now, there are a lot of formatting options in Google Docs that you could use to make this table stand out a little bit more, make it a little bit more presentable. Things like bold facing the font, like in the title, making your fonts a little bit larger, inserting images from your lab experiment, and even adjusting the fill color in your data table or the border color. And of course, changing the font style, the font size, and so on. So if you can do all this in Google Docs, why use Google Sheets? Well, Google Sheets is really built to calculate data in addition to display the data. And so as your data tables become more advanced, Google Sheets will become a better option for you. You're also going to like the ability to create graphs and charts in Google Sheets as it becomes a tool that can speed up the chart making process. So to get to Google Sheets, we're just going to go to the Google Apps button and select Sheets from your Google Apps, or you could type in sheets.google.com and that should bring you to Google Sheets as well. We're going to start with a blank sheet. And we're going to recreate this table, but in Google Sheets. So just a quick rundown of a few terms that are going to be important in Google Sheets. You'll notice that there's a bunch of boxes already on the sheet. We're not going to use all of these boxes for your table, but we are going to use some of them. Now, each of these boxes is referred to as a cell, and each cell has what's called a cell address, which is identified by the column that the cell is in and the row that the cell is in. So columns go up and down like in a building, and rows go side to side across your sheet. So this particular cell has an address of C3. If you've ever played the game Battleship, the cell addresses work much like the game Battleship. This cell here would be referred to as cell B8, and this cell here would be F1. Okay, so to get started, we're going to title the spreadsheet. So if your teacher provides you with your own copy of a spreadsheet that they've given you as a template, your title would already be inserted. If not, I suggest that you put the period number that you're in. So if this was a period 7 class, then I would give it the title of the lab. And then your last name. Not the teacher's last name, but your last name. Okay, this will identify specifically who the student is and whose work this is. Okay, if there's a group of you, you could put in, 2 or 3 last names. And I'm sure if you cut this down to Earthworm Lab, that would be fine as well. Now that you've titled your spreadsheet, we can move on to take the data from this table and we can put it into this table. Okay. You'll notice that Google Sheets has a pull-down menu, much like Google Docs has. File, Edit, View, Insert, Format, Data, Tools. There are some add-ons which you may or may not have. There's a great help menu, and there are some accessibility functions. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start in cell A1. And actually, before we do that, we're going to come down here. You'll notice that there's one tab at the bottom. And at this point, we only have one tab. Okay, and this is referred to, each of these tabs is referred to as a sheet. The entire file is called a workbook. And in your workbook, right now, we have one sheet. If you click the little arrow, you can rename that sheet. And we're just going to call that table. So this is where our data table will be. We can click in cell A1 and we can type the title, Earthworm Distribution Experiment. Okay, and at any time, if I'm moving faster than you can, please feel free to pause the video to make the changes in your own spreadsheet, and then unpause the video and continue watching. Don't worry about the fact that your title exceeds the width of your column at this point. We're going to come back and do some formatting later. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to take this table, we want this text to go into our spreadsheet as well. Now this first row is called the header row. The header row contains the titles of each of the columns. So we're going to need a header row called sun intensity and one called biomass. And you'll notice that in parentheses, in science, it's appropriate to label your units. Actually, on any table, it's appropriate to edit your or add your units in parentheses. Now in this table, you'll see that the units are also added next to each number. However, that's not necessary, and actually it will work against you if you do that in your spreadsheet using Google Sheets when you try to make your graph or your chart later. So instead, we're only going to put the units where they're necessary, and that's in the header row at the top. So sun intensity and biomass. Okay, now the sun intensity has qualitative data that describes it, not quantitative. And if you remember, qualitative data uses words to describe the data, whereas quantitative uses numbers. So we have biomass here, in parentheses, grams. Now sometimes for presentation purposes, you might want to take your units and put them underneath the title. So to do that, you can click in front of the first parenthesis, and you can hold your control button down and push the enter, and that will allow that to be entered on the line below the title biomass. When you click out of that cell, the cell width automatically adjusts, or the cell height. Okay, now under sun intensity, we have some data to record, shaded, partly sunny, and sunny. And then we have some data. Now remember, this is very important that you do not use the units next to the numbers. Only the numbers, only the quantitative data here. And that's why it's so important to label your units at the top of each of your columns. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do some formatting to this table. And there's a bunch of formatting options underneath your format button. But there's also a lot of tools up here that we can use. And these icons are also easier to use. First thing we're going to do is click in this little box up here. This selects the entire table, and it will make the changes that you now apply to your entire table all at one time, so that will save you some time. And we're going to enlarge our font size to 14. So again, I clicked in this button here. That selects the entire spreadsheet. And I can come over here to the font size, and I can change that to 14. Right next to the font size is the actual font. And the font that we have selected by default is Arial, which is really a good font for data. So I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to select my title. So I click in cell A1, and you can see that's all of this text is what's available in cell A1. And I am going to change the title text and pick something else. I'm going to use this here, Chelsea Market. And it's just important that whatever text you select, it's legible. And while we're here, let's take the title. And because it's the title, let's make it a little bit larger. Pick 18. If 18 is too big and you wanted 16, you'll notice that you cannot select 16, but you can click and type that in, and you'll get that 16-point font size here for your title. Okay, next, what we want to do is select the rows 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I can click in click in the row title 3. So I click in 3, 4, 5, and 6, and now I can hover the hand, until it becomes a up and down arrow. The cursor changes to an up and down arrow, and then I can drag that, and this will select my row height, and it just makes it a little bit larger. Okay, and again, that's for presentation purposes. I also want to do the same between column A and B. I'm going to just make that a little bit wider, and I'm going to do the same for biomass. And basically, I want to make it wide enough so that it fits underneath my title. This way the table is centered below the title. Okay. And you can adjust that as necessary. Right, the next thing we can do is we can apply our borders around. All right, so your borders button looks like this. And again, these are all also underneath your format. Okay. You can find a variety of formatting tools under there, and you can also do some adjustments to your data, doing some sorting, inserting. All right, so remember, these are up here, but I find it easier to get used to using these tools. And so I highlight the table by clicking in cell A3, dragging across to B3, and then down to highlight all of that data. I select the borders, and I'm going to pick all borders. Okay, while I'm in this tool, you can see you can also adjust border colors here. So if you're using color in your charts, you can adjust your border colors. I'm going to leave mine black for now. And you can also adjust your border weight or thickness. And again, I'm just going to leave mine at the default for now. Okay, so there's your borders. You can also change the color. So you can highlight cell A and B, and you can find your fill color, which is the bucket here. You can click that, and you can pick a color. Now, this is important when you pick colors that they're easy to read the text. Right, so you're not picking a color that's too dark for black text. And you can also adjust your text color, which is right next to the fill bucket. Okay, so if you're picking a really dark color, you can pick a lighter color text like white, and sometimes then you get the contrast that you're looking for. Okay. All right, now what we want to do is we want to center all of our text within the cells, both left to right, but also up and down within the cell. So horizontally and vertically, we're going to adjust that. So we highlight again everything in there, and we pick the horizontal align button and the vertical align button, which is right next to it, and we pick the center. Okay, and you can see how now that adjusted your text, and you can see this makes it look, nice and easy to read. It's very presentable. And the last thing you want to do is highlight cell A1 and B1, and you want to merge these two cells together. And you do that right here is a merge button, and you click the little arrow next to it, and you can merge horizontally, and that now puts your title in one big cell. Okay, so that's the conclusion of this video that shows you how to build your table and do some minor formatting. If you needed to change the colors in these cells, you could do that as well, if that helps the presentation of your video. I'm sorry, the presentation of your data. Okay, we'll catch you in the next video, and we'll show you how to take this data, and we'll show you how to write a formula to perform some basic calculations, and then we'll also show you how to make a chart. Thanks for watching.